Hi, everybody. Good evening. We're so happy you've joined us tonight. I'm Kerry Kennedy, and I'm the president of Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights. Again, I want to thank you all so much for joining us for our special screening of Boys State. Growing up in the Kennedy family, my brothers and sisters and I learned at a very, very early age that politics and our family commitment to social justice, racial justice, and economic justice were deeply intertwined, and that no one is ever too young to care deeply about our country and to take to heart their civic duties. It was through that lens that I found this film so touching and so poignant, especially given the intense election season we find ourselves in today. It really does hold up a mirror to the divisions that we face as a country. For those of you who haven't seen the film, each year hundreds of students gather for a 10-day retreat to learn about electoral politics at the local and state level. They run for and are elected to everything from city council to governor. Teams are divided into two parties, Federalists and Nationalists, where they write party platforms, give speeches, plot strategy, organize, and vote. Girls go to Girls State and boys go to Boys State. Tonight, we have the opportunity to dive deeper into the creation of this extraordinary documentary, as well as to hear about the continued growth of two of its main characters, Stephen Garza and Ben Feinstein. Stephen, I'd like to turn to you first. You arrived at Boys State wearing a Beto O'Rourke t-shirt, admiring Bernie Sanders and Napoleon Bonaparte, and declared your support for gun control. As one of the few people of color in the entire documentary and at Boys State, in a sea of white, tell us what it was like for you to be a gubernatorial candidate and how that experience has shaped you since.
Thank you so much, and thank you for hosting this. It is very daunting. It's especially considering the fact that I am not like most of the kids there. I'm in a racial and political minority at that Texas Boys State program. I knew it was going to be an uphill battle, and I wasn't entirely sure that I had it in me to do what I ended up doing in the film. I care deeply about politics in the sense of that I truly am a believer that government can be used as a source for good in people's lives. Growing up, from an immigrant family who didn't have a lot, it kind of fell onto me to be that person to break away from this cycle of just working nonstop until you died. You grow up impoverished, and you would start working from a young age, and you would keep working, and that would be your life. So being there at Boys State and having the chance to be a representative of Hispanic people, and not let the enormous mountain in front of me make me back down from this challenge of trying to change people's minds and change people's ideas. I knew that I was going to run on a platform of unity. I felt that in 2018 the country had been very, very polarized, and while I have my very strong political opinions on a number of issues, I would never sacrifice those for anything. I also understand that at the end of the day, we're all Americans and we all have to share this country that we live in. And so running for governor of Texas Boys State was my trying to understand what's on people's minds, to be thrown into what might seem like the lion's den, and actually realizing that there's a lot of people who have a lot of things in common with me that are not that different. On the surface, we don't seem to have anything alike. But when you actually sit down with a person and not yell at them and not, be immediately hostile to them, you learn a lot, and you walk away actually with a greater appreciation and understanding for where they're coming from. uh, and that was, could I do that on a wide scale and show basically Texas boy state that our generation is going to fix the problems that our country has faced for decades. That was my goal there, and despite the results of the election, I think I accomplished that goal in opening people's eyes to another way of going about politics.
It's really interesting to watch you because at the beginning of the documentary, it seemed like it was really going to be hard for you to make it through, and even to get all of your signatures to get on the ballot. But what struck me about your campaign was not that you had all the answers, but that you were really your greatest strength was your willingness to listen and to ask questions and to hear people who disagreed with you. And I think that people seem to really respond to that. I think, Ben, you were the incredible mastermind behind the Federalist victory. And 2 years later, and in light of the often toxic political climate that we see on from our most powerful national politicians today, how do you evaluate that campaign, your campaign, and what has changed? What do you think you did well? What would you like to do differently? How do you see your future in politics?
So I definitely don't want to take, first of all, I don't want to take all the credit for like what I pulled off. It would absolutely not have happened if it weren't for a lot of really, really smart people who I'm happy to call friends that were working with me every step of the way. I definitely had a lot of moments of just not knowing what to do. And I had a lot of moments where I had to rely on others. I'm definitely proud of what I was able to form. It's not easy stepping into a position on day 2 of a program where you have to lead 500 people you've never met before and a process you've never done before. And a lot of it was learning on the job and just kind of being willing to go for it and knowing that it's very much either sink or swim. Like if you stay still, the other side's just going to get ahead. And I'm proud of so much of what we all accomplished, and I'm proud that we were able to pull it off. And I think in retrospect, there's, it's like one of Newton's laws of motion, like what you put into motion stays in motion unless something else stops it. And in retrospect, I've been thinking a lot about it. And I think creating a very energetic atmosphere where winning is the focus is a fantastic thing for a campaign. But I think there is also an element in what I maybe failed to temper and set a bad example for in some aspects of there's a point when winning needs to take a back seat to, common decency or just like, not going too far. And I think at times we did. And it's like there's a particular scene in the documentary where one of, someone within my party, I swear to God, it was not me. I would never. But someone in my party, made some pretty racist stuff about the chairman, Rene Otero of the Nationalist Party. And well, I can say it wasn't me. I also did, in a large part, create an atmosphere that was very, energetic, and I didn't make a firm enough example of there have to be limits to this. And I think in the context of a summer camp, it's like, it doesn't matter that much in the end. And I think, net good and net bad, I'm very, very proud of everything that happened. And in the future, though, I definitely want to, work on like balance. And I feel like our politics need it too. We're very focused on elections as a matter of winning. And we're very willing to throw the other person under the bus pretty quickly and not remember that we have to, as Stephen said, share a country with them afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been my biggest takeaway is just like civility should come before victory.
And Ben, what are you doing now? What have you been doing the last 2 years?
So I'm at college now. I was at UNC Chapel Hill last year, but now I'm at SMU in Dallas. I'm studying history and international studies, learning Russian. I hope to work for the U.S. government someday. So
Okay.
I think like Department of State or like Department of Defense.
All right, good. Okay, good to hear.
Yeah.
We're also joined tonight by Amanda McBain and Jesse Moss, who are not only talented filmmakers, but a husband and wife team who have lived and worked together for nearly 20 years. So lots of questions about how you do live and work together at a moment when so many husbands and wives are finding themselves in the same house together and not at two different places of work, and sort of struggling with being so close to each other in such proximity that they haven't had before. So we want to get to that, but let's start with the film. What was your motivation to make the film and to capture some of the realities of American politics, as well as inspiring look at the civic engagement of youth?
Yeah. Okay. I think that, like a lot of Americans, I think we were really trying to understand the political division in our country. This was right after Trump's election, and the environment felt so toxic. Everybody had retreated to their corners. And when we learned about the boys' state and girls' state programs, we recognized that this is a pretty rare space in American life where people with different political views are actually getting together face to face to try to talk to each other. Mm-hmm. And we thought that could be a really interesting space to explore as documentary filmmakers. We weren't looking for easy answers, but we were also struck that these are young people, and they're growing up in this age of existential threat from climate change and gun violence. And they're also internalizing the norms of political discourse that we see coming from Washington every day. And so I think there was an opportunity to kind of check in with young people and to see how they're engaging with our democracy and what they're learning from this program and whether civil discourse is even possible. So that was the motivation. And when we learned about Texas boys' state, we thought, what a Texas being a fascinating political state. The boys in Texas the year before, this is mentioned briefly in the documentary, had voted to secede from the Union. And that gesture, while playful, was also kind of deadly serious in that it spoke to this potential of disunion, that our country is really facing its own existential threat, and that democracy, something we've taken for granted, maybe is something that really we can't and no longer. And I think we recognize now, 2 years since we shot the film, that we're at a very fraught moment.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to add anything?
No, I mean, that was a great, that really was our motivation. You know, you go in with these big ideas that you feel the need, you need to investigate. And this was sort of our way of grappling with those big questions about democracy, but kind of from the side in somewhat playful way. And then we got there and found these guys. And I think that then became really the investigation. And we just loved meeting all four of them, so.
Great. We're going to open this up to questions from the audience in just a few moments. And just to our tech people, I can't see questions. I don't know. I'm not seeing them on my iPhone. So if there's a way of doing that, that would be so great. But meanwhile, how did you choose? I mean, I understand choosing Texas because they voted to secede last year, but boys' state, as I've discovered in the last few weeks, happens all over this country. And there's also a girls' state. Mm-hmm. So how did you choose boys over girls and Texas over Massachusetts, for instance?
I mean, really, we wanted to go back to Texas boys' state because of that vote to secede, that secession vote the year before. You know, if they voted to secede in 2017, what were they going to do in 2018? What comes after secession? Is it full civil war, or is there a compromise? Do they reconcile? And I think, you know, what's going to be so interesting is the next project is Girls State, not in Texas. We haven't totally decided which state. We're talking to a couple, and
including Massachusetts.
Including Massachusetts, actually.
Yay.
Yes. So, you know, very different state, and also Girls State will be different, and every program is kind of built differently too. Some programs really do their elections in the beginning of the week. and spend the rest of the week governing, and some do it at the end of the week. So there's a lot to explore there, and can't wait. So we'll see.
Interesting. Okay, thanks. So this program tonight is brought to you by the Film Boys State, and also by Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights, our Speak Truth to Power human rights education program. So we have a question from the head of that program, Karen Robinson, and she's asking what both Ben and Stephen are doing now. So yeah, go ahead.
Awesome. Yeah. So in the past 2 years, I graduated high school, May Creek High School and Katy ISD. I went on to the University of Texas at El Paso for a year, which was very fun. My little excursion into the West Texas. This past summer was pretty eventful. I got my transfer acceptance into the University of Texas at Austin, which Boys State was filmed at. I really did fall in love with the campus at my time at Boys State, and I really worked to make sure that I could transfer over there. So that was in June. In July, I actually, along with my stepdad and my mother, contracted COVID-19 and recuperated. So that's something that me and the president share. And now I've actually just moved from Houston to Austin yesterday to work for a congressional campaign here in Austin. Wendy Davis, who ran for governor here in 2014, and she's running for Congress now. And I'm working with her on youth outreach for the campaign for the next 30 some odd days. So very exciting.
All right. Well, that's a good follow-up question for both Ben and Stephen. How do we get people in your age group to get out and vote?
Well, Stephen, you're the youth outreach man.
I think it's giving them a reason to vote. I've been making phone calls all day today, specifically targeting 18 to 24-year-olds, and making sure that they, are going to be voting this November. I get a lot of, and this is traditional with making phone calls, but you get a lot of people who don't answer. A lot of people who will hang up when you say, "Hey, I'm Stephen with the Wendy campaign. Do you have a minute to talk?" They'll cut you off for you. I think it's a factor of disillusionment with politics, and also they don't feel that it matters to them. And I think we need to present the case to young people. And what I love about promoting this film to organizations like RFK and colleges all across the country is that it shows that there's no age where you have to be civically involved. It could start at a very young age, and you need to have an active role in participating in politics, and for the fact that it affects you. I think the case we need to make to young people is to let them know that they have a stake in this. The elections this year, the school board elections in the spring this year, the city elections, will all directly influence their lives, will influence how they go to school, where they work, how the economy is doing when they're working. Can they afford to get a home? Can they afford to have a child one day? Those are all questions that are going to be affecting people my age in the next 10 years, as we do that. So the need to be able to explain that not explain, but let them know that the stakes are high. And even though Congress is dominated by mostly older people, the decisions they're making now, decisions with the Supreme Court, are going to affect me and Ben for generations. We could be feeling the effects of a Trump presidency for the next 20, 30, 40 years, when we're both in our early 60s. It's very important for young people to vote. And that's the case we're trying to make, is that I actually just got a mask today from somebody, and I'm not sure if I have it on me. I don't, but it says "Vote November 3rd. The stakes are too high for you to stay at home." Play on the famous LBJ ad. So that's what it is. It's every single year is the most important election of your lifetime. Apparently, every 4 years, this truly is the most important one. in recent memory, because there's so much at stake. The future, the direction that this country has to choose for itself. Do we want to go forward and try to go back to that age where we lived, side by side as Americans in a, cohabitual way where despite disagreements, you could go out and have lunch with somebody, and despite disagreements, they could go, the Congress can go home saying that we worked some things out today? Or do we want to keep going on this divisive, toxic path that we've been on for not just the past 4 years, but the past 20, 30 some odd years, as the country has become more polarized? That's the case we have to make to young people this election.
It's interesting. So it sounds like you're saying that you think the key issue facing our country at this time is healing. How do we come together? And that question is particularly important in politics, whereas one of the questions here by Michael Clayman is saying, in our federal government, we are not only experiencing the dangers of winning at all costs, but the success of winning at all costs. So what does that mean? How do you convince a candidate that even though she or he can win, that they shouldn't choose not to win if that's going to be more healing for our country?
I mean, I think that starts on a lot of levels, but I think the ultimate realization that I hope we're finally waking up to is when you conflate someone's political views with their morality, with their worth as a person, and you invent all these artificial mechanisms and work through every means possible to make that connection happen in order to win an election or achieve political victory. It's like, what do you have in the end, right? And I mean, there's always the next election. There's always the 2 to 4 years of governing that is in the middle of it. There's always the court decisions. And if we keep pushing our institutions, off the boat into the water of partisanship, they're going to sink. And we need them on the boat. We're not going to sail far without sails or an engine or a rudder. And I don't know. I mean, I don't even know if it's an individual candidate choice. I think a lot of it is societally, we need to stop engaging in a lot of what we tolerate or promote. And we need to look at politics differently as a country, because this would not happen if we did not support it with our votes. And I think in a lot of cases with a lot of candidates on both sides of the aisle, we've been very willing to be more entertained than fulfilled by our politics.
Yeah, beautifully said. More entertained than fulfilled. And I think that happens a lot in politics. So Ben and Stephen, you both chose to go to Boise State to spend 10 days of your summer vacation not doing something else, but to be at Boise State. What was it in your civic education at school or in your household that drove you to say, this would be a great way to spend 10 days? And do you see your future in politics?
I can touch on that quickly. I actually got in because a friend of mine who was older than me did Model United Nations in high school with me. And, he said, Ben, you're good at Model UN. You'll love Boise State. It's the same kind of thing, but there's more people and it's more exciting. So I did it for that reason, not really knowing what to expect. And I mean, honestly, it was a hugely moving experience in a lot of ways, because all you really see in the film are the elections. But what I say in a lot of these interviews are it's more than the elections. It's civic education. It's meeting people from all over the place. It's being united with a bunch of people around a common mission, a common ideology. It's a very rare, unifying, huge, nothing else you've never done before style experience that most people don't have the opportunity of getting. And I would say definitely, if there's anyone in the audience looking to do it, do it. Even if you're not super into politics, even if you don't think you have it in you, definitely go. because for like every single person I've talked to, yeah, I've worn this Boys State shirt around to, you know, just random places. And now if people come up and they'll say, oh, I was at, you know, Mississippi Boys State, or I was at, you know, Kansas Boys State, and they all love it, even 30 years later, even the ones who didn't, you know, didn't run for governor or whatever. It's huge.
Yeah, that's so great. I've heard that from many people as well. So I'm actually sitting here with a friend of mine. Come over, George, who went to Boys State. How old were you when you went?
Well, it was high school.
When he was in high school, and he
Yeah,
loved it.
in Colorado.
That's awesome.
I will say that I'm wearing a counselor shirt. Me and Ben are actually counselors for the program, so we help run it, which is very very a different version. It's like a more fun to be able to. I think Boys State, Girls State is I think a political scientist's dream, to be able to kind of sit there and observe in, you know, a controlled environment, politics happening. You know, as a counselor, we do take an active role in making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. But for a lot of it, it's just sit back and watching them. And it's fascinating watching the boys, the ones that came after me, go through that crucible of forming a government with me not having to worry about making a speech or anything like that. But I will say that every time there's a Boys State in person, there's a huge parade to the Capitol where they actually close off the streets with police cars, and all 1,000 of us with the marching band and the flags at the head of the parade. They play the Texas Boys State song. And as a counselor, the year after the events of the film took place, I went back, and on the side of traffic that was allowed to come through, a older man, probably in his 50s, rolled down his window while the band was playing the song, and the kids were singing it as they were marching or walking to the Capitol, and started singing the song with them. That he had probably gone to Boys State, you know,
so great,
40 years ago. And remember the song, and the shirts have not changed at all. The shirts are still the same. You know,
I have to say, I saw that and I thought, I want a Boys State shirt. So that's really great.
No,
well,
definitely.
I think that's all we have time for tonight. Thank you so much for this extraordinary film, and to Steve and Ben, thank you for joining us and for your commitment to our country. Really, you know, I grew up in a family that believed that politics is an honorable profession, and I think we need to realize those values again, and to make politics honorable again. That's especially important now. 4 weeks from tomorrow, we face the most important presidential run of our lifetime. So we are, I'm so happy you're all here. I'm so happy to celebrate the power of youth and the importance of democracy and being engaged in public service. So thanks everybody for coming, and don't forget to speak your truth to power. Good night.
Thank you, Kerry.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.